welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. I'm Dave Palmer, and we are talking about the will, and the will is kind of complicated. I'll admit there are only 2 videos where we're talking about the will, and that doesn't mean it's not important. It's extremely important, but we're only devoting 2 videos right now about this particular topic of the Summa, and then we'll be moving on to something else in the next video. And so in the last one, we basically showed how St. Thomas said that God is the exterior principle of the will. God alone moves the will, right? And that's not to say that other things don't participate in moving the will, like the sensible appetite and the intellect. And it's actually kind of complicated, but and this one's going to be kind of complicated as well, but let's get right to it and see if we can make sense of this. So if God moves the will, the first question that Thomas is going to ask is, well, does he do it by necessity? Which means basically, are we robots? Are we programmed to a particular end, like we, and Thomas would say, dogs are, and birds are, and ducks, and platypuses, and plants, right? Where they don't have free will. They just, remember teleology, they're kind of directed to a particular end, and there isn't a whole lot of decision-making going on with these non-rational creatures, but we don't believe that we're robots because we have free will. But what is that balance? What is that tension between our free will and providence and teleology and God moving us towards a particular end? Well, that's what we'll be talking about during this video. All right, so again, we're in Prima Secunda, the first part of the second part of the Summa, question number 10, article number 4, Dionysius. This is somebody that Thomas quotes a lot. Pseudo-Dionysius, the Areopagite, I think is his official name. And he says, Dionysius says, it belongs to divine providence not to destroy, but to preserve the nature of things. Isn't that just beautiful? It is, well, I won't repeat it, but we enjoyed it one time, right? But it's a really cool one. It has to do with Wisdom 8:1, which we've quoted before, I think, during these videos. Wherefore, it moves all things in accordance with their conditions, so that from necessary causes, through the divine motion, effects follow of necessity. Now, what is he talking about here? He has equipped creatures like the hummingbird with what it needs in order to accomplish its end, right? A hummingbird's end, it's got to be able to suck the nectar out of flowers, and so it has to stay still and do what it does. And that's why it needs the little wings that are flapping real quickly and needs to be able to stand still, kind of like, you know, like a drone or something, right? But it's very cool. The other example I like to use is the salmon, right? Swimming upstream, being able to have the muscle in its body, the fins, to like do something that seems unnatural, like swimming up against a waterfall, but they do it, right? They do it to spawn. God gives them what they need out of necessity to accomplish their end, right? Isn't that cool? All right, but from contingent causes, effects follow contingently. Contingent just means that it's not necessary. It's not like predetermined the end, like us, where we have free will, right? So we're not directed to one particular end, but we have some say about it. Since, therefore, the will is an active principle, not determinate to one thing, but having an indifferent relation to many things, God so moves it that he does not determine it of necessity to one thing, but its movements remain contingent and not necessary except in those things to which it is moved naturally. Okay, so there are some things that are moved naturally. Okay, so like this picture I showed you of these riders, right? They had a choice on whether they wanted to go riot that day or not, and unfortunately they made the wrong choice, right? But the only thing that we have, and I'm going to kind of repeat here because I've shown you this a number of times, you probably see you know what's coming here. The only thing that we of necessity have to desire is happiness, okay? But how we find our happiness can vary from person to person and can be good or evil, as we learned about in a previous video, right? All right, is the goodness of the will dependent on the eternal law? Now, in a future video, we're going to learn about the 4 kinds of law. It's a really, really cool part of the Summa, and the eternal law, the divine law, the natural law, and the human law. Okay, so right now he's given us a little preview about the eternal law. The easiest way to describe the eternal law is it's basically everything that's true. Okay, it's divine reason. It's not a part of the law. It's everything that's true. You know, I'll give you a few examples here, but again, be doing this for the next 1,000 years if I gave you every example, because it's everything, right? So the laws of the gestation, the laws of growth inside the womb, human growth, the different systems within the human body, moral laws, the preservation of life, the dignity of of human life, the laws of thermodynamics. Okay, that falls under the eternal law because it's true, right? And anything that's true is going to fall under the eternal law. The planets rotating around the sun, as long as it's true, as long as there's anything that you can say that's true about that, then it falls under the eternal law. So now Thomas is saying, is goodness of the will, does it fall on, is it dependent upon the eternal law? And this is kind of cool here. He says, wherever a number of causes are subordinate to one another, the effect depends more on the first than on the second cause. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Since the second cause acts only in virtue of the first. Now it is from the eternal law, which is the divine reason. All right, I love this picture of the Trinity. It shows the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's very beautiful. Jesus is like a little baby. That human reason is the rule of the human will. Okay, so there's human reason dependent on divine reason, which is the eternal law. Basically everything in the mind of God, very little of which we actually know because we're so limited in our reason, right? Okay, from which the human derives its goodness. Hence it is written, Psalm 4, many say, who show us good things, the light of thy countenance, O Lord, is signed upon us, as though to say, the light of our reason is able to show us good things and guide our will insofar as it is the light derived from thy countenance. Okay, so our reason, as good as it is, and we're pretty smart, is dependent upon the divine reason. So for us to know things like the laws of thermodynamics, right, we come to know them. Remember the difference between us and the angels and how we come to know things, abstracting phantasms and all that kind of stuff. We come to know things not through innate species like angels. And I know it's getting kind of deep here, but it's all contingent upon, dependent upon divine reason, because God. All knowledge is in God, right? Okay, it is therefore evident that the goodness of the human will depends on the eternal law much more than on human reason, and when human reason fails, we must have recourse to eternal reason, and that's where divine law is going to come in. It's still a ways from now when we're going to learn about the laws, but you're really going to enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. All right, whether goodness or malice is first in the action of the will or in the external action. This is the last article we're going to talk about during this video today. This is kind of deep, okay? I'm gonna warn you, but it's also interesting. So what it has to do with any action. Okay, here you got a couple of young people who are feeding the homeless. Okay, in and of itself, that's a good act. But what Thomas is talking about here is that we have the act, but we also have the intention, the will, right? So this is going to get really complicated, and so hold on tight and let's try to get through this and not take too long, because I know people get fed up if these videos are too long and all that. But just say, are what these young people doing good or bad? Well, it depends. A lot of it depends on what their motive is, what their motivation is. And so here's what Thomas says. And I know it's kind of long, but just bear with me here, okay? External actions may be said to be good or bad in two ways. First, in regards to their genus and the circumstances connected with them. Okay, thus the giving of alms, if the required conditions be observed, is said to be good. Okay, giving money or goods to a poor person in and of itself, if all the conditions are met, it's a good action. In and of itself, it's a good action, right? Secondly, a thing is said to be good or evil from its relation to the end. Thus, the giving of alms for vainglory is said to be evil now. Okay, so if you're at church and you drop a $100 bill in the basket because you want everybody to see you drop the $100 bill into the basket, that's now an evil action, even though objectively speaking what you've done is good, but your intention was bad. All right, your will was bad. You're not trying to help the poor, you're trying to look cool to the people at the church with you, right? Okay, now since the end is the will's proper object, it is evident that this aspect of good or evil, which the external action derives from its relation to the end, is to be found first of all in the act of the will, whence it passes to the external action. Okay, so remember the journey to the grocery store. We said it originates in the mind, and then we carry out. But the beginning, the end begins here, because we have to know what we're going to do. And this also involves the intellect. Intellect, will, external action. Okay, I know this is getting deep here, but hang with me, okay? Okay. Okay. On the other hand, the goodness or malice which the external action has of itself, on account of its being about due matter and its being attended by due circumstances, is not derived from the will, but from the reason. So now we're dealing with reason, will, external action, right? Consequently, if we consider the goodness of the external action insofar as it comes from reason's ordination and apprehension, it is prior to the goodness of the act of the will. Okay, so those two young people that I showed you the picture of a second ago, the idea popped in their mind of helping the poor. Okay, that's in the reason. All right, you with me? Then let's say that guy, he only wanted to go because he wanted to impress the girl. Okay, now we're talking about will, the intention. What is his desire for doing it? Now it's starting to not look so good. But in the reason, originally helping the poor, the thought of it was good, and it's prior to the will. Okay. Okay, but if we consider it insofar as the execution of the action done, it is subsequent to the goodness of the will, which is its principle. Okay, so what this all has to do with is we are complicated. Remember I told you that a long time ago? God is simple. The angels are a little more complicated than God, but more simple than us. We're complicated because we have intellect, we have will, we have the senses, we have sensitive appetites. We are complicated, and that's why human actions get so sticky, because there's so much going on. But it's important that we understand human actions, because that is kind of our way towards eternity, is making the right choices, practicing virtue, and living a holy life, right, in order to get to God one day. All right, so this concludes the last end and the will. That's what we've been talking about for the last few videos, right? We're moving on now to the passions. And I know this one was kind of complicated. The passions, not so much so, but you got to remember, you can't talk about the passions without the intellect and the will also being involved in it. Then we're going to get to habits, virtues, and sin. Then the law. Remember I said the four kinds of law? And grace and merit. And guess what? When we finish all of this, we will be halfway through the Summa. Now we're probably weeks away from being there, but hang in there, keep watching these videos, comment below, like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff, okay? Tell your friends and neighbors about it as well, and we're going to get through this, okay? I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for the comments. A few of you have been doing comments, and I appreciate that very much. All right, that's today's video. This is St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. God bless you. Thanks for watching.